Want to sort of rewind a little bit and put it in context to understand how we have reached here. Now, essentially, like you pointed out, this is historic. This is something that has never been seen before, but it started even before the coronavirus pandemic. Crude prices, oil prices were in fact weak. They had been falling. And then, of course, the coronavirus hit. And then we know what happened. The lockdowns were announced world over. The flight operations have been shut. People are indoors. So obviously, all of the demand started plummeting and falling massively. So they were weak even before COVID hit and then began dropping further after COVID pandemic. Now, last week, the oil exporting countries decided to cut production by 10%. So that happened, but experts also say that this production cut is not enough, and it was perhaps too little too late. However, there will perhaps have to be more production cuts going forward as well. But despite all of this, the demand for oil continued to plummet. Storage, and this led to storage capacities being completely exhausted. So tankers that were essentially used to transport oil, even those were being used to store oil because there was no other place, and storage cost of storing oil has started skyrocketing. And as a result, what we saw was the May WTI futures contract falling to minus $40 per barrel. So what does that really mean? Now, essentially, the seller pays the buyer $40 for 1 barrel of oil. Let me just say that again. The person who's selling is going to be paying somebody to actually take the oil off their hands. Now, that's the extent to which this crisis has come to. Now, the contract essentially is when the buyer locks in purchase at a certain price at a certain time, and futures contracts are essentially settled with physical delivery of crude. So the May contracts due to expire on April 21st, that is today, that fell to negative 40 to minus 40. So buyers no longer wanted oil because the storage costs are skyrocketing and they don't want to pay for that. Where will they put the oil? And the sellers feel that it is cheaper to actually get rid of the oil instead of shutting down production. And then you also have traders or investors in these kind of futures who obviously don't want the physical oil because, they are in it for the price movement, not to actually physically buy the oil. And anyway, there is no place to store it. They don't want to extend the contract to next month because who knows, things could get worse. And they're not finding anybody else to take the contract off their hands. So they're willing to pay people to take the contract off their hands. So essentially, this is where we are at. Now, coming to India, WTI prices don't directly impact India because India imports Brent crude. However, whenever something like this happens, India is not, cut away from what happens in the overall international oil prices market. So India does get impacted, but Brent crude prices currently are still around $20–25 a barrel. And for India, a $1 fall in crude prices reduces India's import bill by as much as 2,900 crore. So on that front, it is the lower oil prices is, good for India, good for the Indian economy. And also 90% comes from taxes on fuel. So remember, the government has already raised excise on fuel by 3 rupees on the 14th of March. But despite all of this, the government revenue from fuel is likely to be hit. So on one hand, for India, it is good from a perspective of, the import bill really coming down. But on the other hand, there is no demand right now, and India is going to be impacted by everything that is happening around the world. The prices are still volatile. And it also, from that front, it does impact India on a negative perspective as well.